Hello and welcome to this video, and it's a follow-up to one I did 6 years ago in this channel called Anti-War, and the title of this video is Italy joining the war in 1940 changed the course of the war. By Italy joining the war in June 1940, they changed the course of the war, and I'll talk about what I mean by that. So you probably know a little bit about the Second World War, or maybe more accurately, as we look, here's some natural ice. And again, this glass. As we look at it today, a better name might be the World War Part II. It's a good time to do this because it's almost 75 years when Italy surrendered to the Allies, or as they officially called themselves, the United Nations. And then, they started the United Nations Organization in 1945. By this time, 75 years ago, and my grandfather was in the war, but he passed away 2 years ago. He was 96. He would talk about it sometimes, but by this time, 75 years ago, the Allies had pretty much overrun the island of Sicily, and they were planning to land on the mainland of Italy. And Italy performed very poorly in the war. They lost all their African territories, and they were allowed after the war to administer Somaliland and Libya for a little while under United Nations guidance, but they were pretty much, they lost their Greek islands, the Dodecanese Islands. They lost territory to Yugoslavia. So Italy did not do, and plus their whole country was bombed mercilessly by British air power, and their navy decimated, and their country ravaged by the war on the mainland. So you say, well, they did it to themselves. Yeah, that's right. So we know the situation in the spring of 1940, right? Let's backtrack a little bit. September 1st, we're right here at the beginning of September. Almost 80 years ago, Germany attacked Poland. And then 2 weeks later, 16 days later, here comes the Soviet Union from the east, attacking Poland from the east and taking all the land that they wanted in the east. And by the way, never given any of it back up until today. Now, that Eastern war against Poland only lasted a few weeks. So by the end of September, Poland was finished. And then Germany had told consequently, France and Great Britain declared war on Germany because they said they attacked Poland, their ally. They did not declare war on the Soviet Union, however, for invading on September 17th. That certainly would have changed the course of the war. But to see the Soviet Union, Stalin, they were very clever. They'd say, oh, we're not invading, we're coming in for security reasons. But it was all prearranged with the German government back in August. So they were certainly working in partnership to take Poland apart. So it would have been appropriate, if they're going to declare war on Germany, to declare war on the Soviet Union. They almost went to war with the British and the French almost went to war with the Soviet Union in April 1940 because they were planning to land troops in Norway, whether Norway wanted them to or not. Norway told them to back off and leave them alone. They were neutral. It didn't matter. They were going to land troops in Norway, a British-French force, march across Sweden, whether they liked it or not. You know what I mean? So much for respecting the neutral countries, because neither side did in World War II. If you're a neutral country and you're in the way, guess what? You're getting invaded by either side. And then they were going to go into Finland and help them fight the Soviet Union. Most people don't know about this mission. But Finland collapsed and surrendered before they landed, so they called it off. And then the war broke out between the British and French against Germany in Norway. And anyway, so that was all thrown off. All right, so after Poland was defeated in 1940, 39. And by the way, the British and the French did nothing, practically nothing, to help Poland. They encouraged them, stand up to Germany. We're your allies. And then Germany attacks and they do nothing to help them. We know today that Germany had almost no defenses in the West. If France and Britain would have started a bombing campaign and an invasion of Germany from the West, I mean, World War II might have ended in early 1940 because Germany would have been having all their troops in the East, when practically they were just banking on the British and the French not doing anything, which is what they did. And then if Germany would have been invaded from the West, they might have found out that their partner, the Soviet Union, wouldn't have been so friendly after all. Well, they found that out in 1940 anyway. But okay. After that war against Poland, very vicious attack on Poland, then Hitler tells the British, tells Chamberlain, look, let's just call off the war. You haven't had any of your cities bombed, and we haven't had any of our cities bombed, neither France. And that's what we've all been paranoid about, a terrible air war with air power now. So let's just, it's done. Poland lost. You said you were going to help them. You didn't do anything to help them. We've had some fighting in the ocean, the war at sea. Well, let's just call it off. It would be nothing like World War I, just like a minor thing. They say, no. We're going to bring you down. We're bringing you down. So now it's like a stalemate, right? The Germans don't want to go into France and have another World War I because that didn't work out too well in 1914. And the British and French aren't really too excited about having their cities bombed, so it's kind of like a standoff. So the big fighting in 39 and 40 at the beginning is on the high seas. And the British and French start putting a blockade on Germany. Well, that would have worked, except there's only one little problem. The Soviet Union is in the east. I don't know how to do this thing where you show the computer while you're on. Somebody might be able to help me with that, where you're showing things on the internet while you're talking instead of seeing my face, which you don't need to see. That would be helpful, but I have this map, so it's pretty low tech, right? But don't worry about the colors. That's something to do with revisionist powers and countries that want to keep the status quo and all that. So you've got the Soviet Union in the east. They were a partner with Germany in 1939, 1940. So they're sending war material to Germany. So the blockade isn't too effective. It was effective in the Mediterranean because all the British and French have to do is block the Strait of Gibraltar, and the Germans can't get anything through that area. So they just block off the North Sea, and then this pass through Denmark, and they can't get anything. But the blockade is not going to be too successful if the Soviet Union is going to supply stuff to Germany from the east. Well, they both start, and Germany's performance on the high seas wasn't that great because their navy was inferior to France and Great Britain. It was really inferior to France's navy alone, so they sure weren't going to stop the blockade fighting them both together. So everyone's eyes started to look at Norway. You saw the map. Norway. You see now, if they could blockade Norway, This would hurt Germany much worse because now Norway is a neutral country, so supplies are not going to be. It's hard for the British to blockade Norway from top to bottom. So supplies were coming in through Norway, neutral country. Not a lot, but see, the British always blockade neutral countries too, by the way. So much for neutrality. But they start looking at that, and the British and the Germans say, well, if we could have control of all of Norway's coastline, top to bottom, there's going to be a lot less effective blockade, because how are they going to guard that whole coast? You know, we can still send ships through to the Western Hemisphere. It's kind of like a dream in a way, because the British blockade is going to get stronger and stronger over time, and they just can clamp down. So they should have been relying on the Soviet Union, but the British and French start looking at Norway, and Germany's looking at Norway. If we could get control of that country, this could go a long way to bringing Germany down. And Germany's saying, contra-wise, if we get control of Norway, it can go a long way to making sure we survive this. Now, to get to Norway, you got to go through Denmark. So Denmark's telling Germany, look, we have no beef with you. We didn't fight you in World War I, and Norway was neutral, so was Sweden. So leave us alone and everything's cool. And the Germans say, yeah, we don't really want to attack you either, but you're in the way, you know. And they told Norway the same thing. Well, perhaps we can make an agreement to have bases there or whatever. And the Norwegians say, no, we don't want to get involved. And the British and French say, maybe we can come and protect you from Germany. And the Norwegians say, no, we don't want to get involved. Whatever country lands here without permission, we're going to go to war with them. So if the British and the French would have landed first, they'd have declared war on Great Britain and France. But, you know, Hitler being hot-headed and impatient, when he sees that the British and French are making moves towards Norway, of course, he jumped the gun, or, you know, freaked out or whatever, got crazy, and launched the operation in April. What was it? April 10th? Can't remember. I think. Doesn't matter. I could find out. That's not the point of the video. So the Germans start landing in Denmark. Well, they took that over in a few hours. Denmark doesn't even resist. They just say, well, what can we do? We can't do anything. We're just not happy. No fighting. Then they go into Norway. Well, Norway fights back. They fighting back, and then here come the British and French say, we're here to help you. So Norway declares war on Germany, and Great Britain and France come in to help. Well, Germany kind of got the jump on them, so they won that war, and they took over all of Norway from bottom to top. So that whole project of bottling up Germany by taking over Norway fails, so the Germans are able to open up some relief of the blockade. Some. The Norwegians are very unhappy to get invaded. Sweden did not get involved, nor did they help Norway. They were resentful from what happened in 1905. That's another story. You could look it up. And Sweden actually allowed German troops to move through their country in the invasion of Norway. That caused some resentment between Sweden and Norway. They allowed German troops to move through Sweden unmolested, free passage into Norway. And that's went on for a couple of years, that they allowed the Germans to move through Sweden into Norway. And then when Germany started losing, very obviously going to lose later on in the war, Sweden didn't want to get too much trouble with the Allies, so they say, oh, you know, you can't come through our country anymore. Especially when they figure Germany's not a threat anymore. They're not going to attack them. They can barely survive. Well, let's go on, and we're getting to Italy. So I thought the video was about Italy. It is. So then, you know, Hitler keeps telling the British and French, well, you want to call the war off because you keep, you know, let's just forget it. Call it off. Boom. It's over. No, no, no. We can't trust you. No, no, no. Bringing you down. You say, okay. Now, the Germans have been working on a plan. And we're not going to go into detail, but it worked. It was a fascinating plan. But the Germans came up with an elaborate trick, really, that the British and French fell for, and Belgium, but Great Britain and France fell for this trick in April 1940 when they come, I'm sorry, May 1940 when they come blasting through Luxembourg, Belgium, and the Netherlands to get into France, which baited the Allies into making a disastrous counterattack, and then Germany was able to defeat France. And this is where the story leads to where we are. France falls quickly. In about a month, France is defeated. And the British, typically, they're worried about one country, themselves. When they make an alliance with you, it's not for your benefit, believe me. We talked about that with alliances in another video. When they make an alliance for you, it's because they're going to use you to go after somebody else. It's not, they're not doing it for you. If you believe that, you live in a fantasy world. So that caused a lot of conflict between Great Britain and France, because they promised when they went to war with Germany that neither side would ever surrender to Germany, you know, if something went wrong, without the permission of the other side. That's the deal. The British don't pull out of the war unless France agrees, and France doesn't pull out unless Great Britain agrees. Well, France is getting invaded, and the Germans are heading toward Paris. And the French say, well, you know, maybe we might want to surrender to Germany, you know, and the British say, oh, no, we got this agreement now. Don't forget this agreement. The French say, yeah, but there's some problems with that agreement, because the implication is that we fight together till the end, but yet we notice that while you're talking about fight to the death, you're pulling all your troops out. Not to mention that we notice when the air battles occur, the British planes don't seem to want to show up anymore. So we're not stupid. We know what's happening. And hold on, I'm gonna go get some water. I'll be right back. So France tells the British, you know, you have a lot of nerve, because you're telling us, oh, we have to keep fighting, we have to keep fighting, but yet you're not doing it. You're abandoning us and telling us we have an agreement that we have to fight to the end, and you won't give us permission to surrender, but you're actually like violating the spirit of the agreement, because the implication is that you'll keep helping us fight. You're not just going to walk away and tell us we got to keep fighting and we have to bear the brunt of the attacks. The British say, no, we're worried that the Germans will capture your navy and use it against us. And the French say, we would blow up all our ships before we let that happen. We would never let the Germans have our navy. I mean, you can forget that. That's not going to happen. So this goes on for days, you know, the British like being very hostile towards France, like almost making a hint that something might happen if they surrender to Germany. And the French say, look, it's over. It's over. We're giving up, because we're getting beat. They're taking over everything anyway. You're leaving, you know, you're taking off and telling us keep fighting. But sometimes you lose. You fight a war, you lose sometimes. So they got us. So they tricked us. We fell into the trap. And so that's it. We out. So France surrenders June 22nd, 1940. But now that's where the Italian story comes into play. Because meanwhile, Italy had been a German ally. But remember, up until 1936, they had been a German adversary, being part of the Allies in World War I. Italy had taken land from Germany after World War I, well, Austria, but that's part of the old German Empire, German Confederation, the First Reich, and all of this. But Mussolini got sort of sucked into Hitler's charisma, and he's greedy and self-centered and all of this. So he's saying, oh, yeah, we could team up with Germany, and then we could take a bunch of stuff that we want. But he's kind of cowardly, too, in a way, because when the war breaks out in 1939, guess who doesn't show up to help Germany fight? Italy, because they're thinking, Italy was getting cold feet in 1938. When it almost broke out in 1938 over Czechoslovakia, who's the country saying, let's stop. So Italy showed up in 1938 and was telling everybody, let's have a conference. Mussolini said, let's talk it out. We don't want to fight, because they had a feeling that this could turn out really bad. So Hitler was thinking, oh, yeah, this fake tough guy. So, okay, so then in 1939, when Great Britain and France go to war with Germany, Italy says, well, it's not technically a military alliance that we have with Germany. It's more like an agreement to accomplish certain goals together in opposition to international communism, all this stuff. So we're just gonna kind of not get involved. But good luck, Germany. We like you. We are so down for you. You just can't imagine how much in favor we are of you. And Hitler's thinking, like, yeah, fine, So Italy, but the real thing is they're scared and they don't know how this is going to go down. You see, they're thinking Germany's going to get blown apart. And why should they go down with a losing team, basically? They figure they're putting their money on a bad horse. But then when Germany comes piling through France now Mussolini thinks very wrongly and very foolishly, he's thinking, well, I can't believe it. Germany's tearing France apart. They're going to win. In the next few weeks, they're going to win. And the British are going to call it off. And we need to get something out of this. So we need to get involved before it's too late and they sign a peace agreement and we don't get anything. We could just jump in right here at the end, pick and get the scraps and come out smelling like a rose. So Italy starts making it pretty clear in early June 1940, well, we might get involved and help Germany because the show is over, since France is beat anyway. The British warn Italy. They say, look, this war, it is far from over, okay? This is simply a battle. Okay, we lost, big deal. We don't lose. Great Britain does not lose wars, basically. They're telling Italy, you're about to make a terrible mistake. We have a huge air force and a strong navy that's way better than your little crummy navy. And we're going to destroy your country. You understand? We're going to bomb your cities, kill thousands of your people, destroy your navy, and take all your territories around the world. We're not playing games. We're the most ruthless country in the world. And if you don't believe it, you're about to find out. I mean, the British, you know, they drink tea and cross their legs and say, oh, yeah. But they're very ruthless. You know, that's sort of like a idiosyncrasy that they have, like that, their mannerisms, but they're very, you know, the Germans are more clunky, you know, they just look aggressive. You know what I mean? Like the way they carry themselves is aggressive, and they don't have a lot of finesse. Whereas the British are very good masters of deceit, let's call it. They are masters of deceit. Or, to steal a terminology, past masters of deceit. So they tell Italy, this will be a disastrous mistake. You know, they basically tell Mussolini, you got it made. You've built up this strong country, one of the strongest in the world. you're a dictator for the most part. You know, you're the prime minister of Italy. You still have a king who's got authority, but you know, you run the show, and you got it made. So why screw it up? Hell, you might be around for 20 more years. I mean, just don't do this. But he's stupid, you know. So he says, no, 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 go to hell. I'm gonna join the war. So they say, okay, you do what you want. You know, Hitler, if you look at the German attitude, they were sort of like confused by it. They were thinking, what is Italy doing? I mean, we don't really need the help now. We needed it a year ago, but they didn't show up. So their attitude is like the British attitude. These are chumps. They only show up when the fight's over. And they're going to kick somebody while they're down and grab stuff. But, you know, oh, well, Germany needs friends. They tried to get Spain involved. Spain's like, we just had a civil war, and we appreciate the help. And you know, they try to convince Spain to join. They say, nah. But we'll wave a sign and say good luck. You know, like we'll wave a pom-pom and wish you the best. Because Spain, their leader, Franco's thinking, Germany ain't going to win this war. This is round one, you know, and the British are going to fight round 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20. So they're just saying, nah, they don't feel too good about this. You know, it doesn't look, the way it looks right now doesn't seem like it's going to really pan out. So, but the Germans think, yeah, we got it, you know, or maybe we've got it. But Italy's thinking, we got it. So what does Italy do? You know, they're so stupid. They declare war on France. You know, they make all these crazy demands on France. We want Savoy, and we want Nice back from you that you stole from us in 1860. France said, we didn't steal that from you. You made an agreement with us. If we attacked Austria and helped you fight Austria, we could have Savoy and Nice. Of course, France backed out as soon as they got what they wanted, you know, so they were kind of lying, you know. But anyway, so Italy says, no, no, we want Savoy and Nice back. Because you lost anyway. And the French say, you're not getting it back, so go to, you know, screw off. So Italy declares war on France, the great Italian kingdom, you know. And they start invading France, except they got their butts kicked, you know. Here's France losing, like literally losing World War II. And Italy invades, and France starts whipping them basically on the border with that little bit of troops they have on the southeastern border. That doesn't look too good. So the early signs of success are not too positive, because you're kicking somebody when they're down, but yet they grab your leg and they flip you over. And you say, oh, yeah, I wanted that to happen. Yeah, right. Now, it's so ridiculous, you know. So here's Italy, a country that really, they have a leader that wants to fight because he's greedy, but the people, the Italian people, their attitude toward the war is not too enthusiastic. You know, they got a feeling of dread. It's a good reason. They had a good reason to have a feeling of dread, you know. So I wish I could bring the map up on a computer. But if you look at the map, you know, if you don't know what the map of Europe looks like, why are you watching the video, right? But like there's Italy at the bottom of Europe, right? You got France, Germany, and Italy, right? And Switzerland. But they're not involved in World War II or World War I. So they're not involved. So Italy very stupidly joins the war. Now you say, well, why does that change the course of the war? I don't understand. Okay, well, let me tell you why. I mean, there's so many factors. I mean, it's incredible. But so France surrenders June 22nd, 1940. Hitler tells Great Britain, well, we tried to tell you that it was over, or we should call it off back last year, but you didn't want to listen. Then we tried to call it off in April, and you didn't want to listen. Now look at the disaster now. What? We haven't bombed any of your cities. You haven't bombed any of our cities. The countries themselves are basically not that damaged. Even France and Belgium and Luxembourg is really not that much damage, because this happened quick. You know, it was like swoosh, you know, swooping through. and then it's all over. So not all of France was taken over, just the northern and western part of France. The southern third of France, plus all their colonies, were allowed to stay independent. The Germans said, well, no, you can stay a free country to some extent. You know, you can have your own capital. They make a temporary capital at Vichy, France. And but you got to surrender, and then you got to send all these French people to come work in France and help us, and you got to pay us all kind of money for having the nerve to declare war on us. You lost, so you got to pay for it. You made us pay for World War I. You got to pay us back. But you could keep your, you know, we're not taking over all of France. You can stay an independent country. The British say, no, 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 you know. Oh, they say, well, okay, just turn over your whole navy to us. Now, the French are very proud. They say, what do you mean turn over our whole navy to you? What, I mean, we're confused. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, well, you know, all the French ships, the aircraft carriers, the battleships, the destroyers, the cruisers, the submarines, just send them over to England, and then, you know, we'll forget about it. The French say, well, we're not going to send our navy over to England. We're not a British colony. I mean, we don't really take orders from you. I don't know why you thought we take orders. But they said, we tried to tell you already, we're not going to let the French Navy go to Germany. That was not part of the surrender. Actually, France was allowed to keep their navy. The Germans allowed France to keep their own navy. They just have to drop out the war and not be, you know, be neutral basically in the war. Help Germany as far as like they have to send people to work as like, I don't want to say slave labor, but, you know, contract labor, if you want to use that term. The French say, well, at least we get this. Keep our own country, you know, as bad as it is. So the British say, you're not going to turn over the navy to us? They say, no, we're not going to turn it over to Germany. We'll blow the navy up before we give it to Germany. Plus, they didn't even ask for it. You're the one asking for it. We didn't want it. I mean, Germany did want it, but they had no way to get it. You understand? They knew France would not let them have the ships. So you might want it all, but sometimes you can't get it all. So the British say, well, fine. No. But the British, they don't take no for an answer. You know what I'm saying? You know, does a rapist say, oh, well, you told me no, so I'm going to leave you alone? No. A rapist doesn't do that. And that's what the British are not going to do. They're not going to take no for an answer. So they launch a secret operation. They say, if France is not going to let us have their ships, we'll just destroy the ships and capture the ones we can capture. So they launched a secret operation in July, a month after, you know, the next month after France surrendered, where they snuck up on the French ships at harbor in England and in Africa and began to attack them and blow the ships up and kill over 1,000 French sailors. Was it 1,200? So the British attacked France. Oh, I mean, France is in an uproar now. They say, what an ally, you know. What an ally. These people are the scum of the earth. You know, that's the French attitude. You know, the French said they talked us into fighting Germany, which they were the ones, you know, pushing this along. We didn't really even want to do it. They're the ones saying, do it. We got to fight Germany. Okay, fine. So then we do that. Then they tell us we got to keep fighting, but then they abandon us. Then they tell us, give us your whole navy, and we say, you're crazy. Then they attack the navy. So France, that was like a crisis. They came like this close to declaring war on Great Britain. I mean, they even launched a bombing raid on Gibraltar, which did nothing. But some of the people in the French Navy were like really hot. They were saying, that's it. We need to send out submarines, start sinking all the British ships, air raids on the British Navy. We just need to go off on them. And the French command, you know, the head of the government, they say, well, I mean, we're dealing with horrible people, obviously. The worst. We thought Germany was the worst. They're bad. These people are just as bad. I mean, this apparently horrible people. They have no honor. I mean, they're just the worst. Okay. I mean, yes, we want to attack Great Britain. We would like to bomb the whole country up because we're angry. They murder, well, murder 1,200 sailors for no reason. But they know they can't do it. Like we can't. Well, in my opinion, they should have declared war because the way it worked out for them was worse. But they just say no. They broke off diplomatic relations with Great Britain, so we never want to talk to you again. Like, never speak to us again because you're no good. You're a horrible country. And that little de Gaulle, who's the puppet, your little puppet, if we find him, he's dead. If we can catch him, we're going to kill him. He's a traitor. But otherwise, just never speak to us again. And then Hitler's telling the French, oh, what an ally you have. Oh, they're great. They're the best, right? The French say, no, they're not. They're terrible. So here's Italy now. Italy say, yeah, we got Savoy and Nice. And we're part of the Axis. We're part of the great German military machine. Germans are saying, yeah, really great. So Italy now, this is where we get into the meat of the video. Well, what happens? Exactly what the British predicted. They say, you don't realize what we're going to do to you, so they start doing it. Italy declares war. They jump in at the last minute. They think the war is over. Now, they find out in 6 months, this is not the end. This is just the beginning of the beginning, or the beginning of the middle. You know what I mean? The beginning of the middle. And of course, Great Britain starts attacking the Italian Navy. When I say Great Britain, I mean, England, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India, you know what I mean? Newfoundland, everybody. Jamaica. Jamaica sent a rowboat, I think, and a canoe. But anyway, they start tearing up the Italian Navy. And then, of course, they start attacking it. They had a little success at first because they start invading the British territories, but they have no, real strength. So once the British start counterattacking in Ethiopia, Italian Somaliland, Libya, what do you think's going to happen? They're going to get destroyed. Italy's going to get whipped apart, beat up, stomped, smashed. And they say, ooh, this is not good. And Mussolini's popularity starts to go down because he's supposed to be the big shot, and now he's getting his whole country busted up. Now, they're so incompetent, Italy. They say, oh, well, since everybody's grabbing everything, I'm going to tell you what happened, and then in a minute, I'm going to tell you what could have happened if they hadn't joined the war. That's what I'm talking about, changing the course of the war. You see what I'm saying? These things tend to lead to another. One thing leads to another. Italy, in their infinite stupidity, not wisdom, they decide, well, we're going to take over Greece. They need Greece. So they start making all these ridiculous demands on the kingdom of Greece. They had already taken over Albania, who they should have been satisfied with. The Greeks say, no, we're not giving you anything. Get out of our face. So Italy attacks Greece, 1940, spring of, 41. Well, you figure Greece, that's a small country. I mean, this is not like the days of Alexander the Great. Greece is going to get killed. You would think. Here's the great Italy with Mussolini prancing around like a rooster, like he's Il Duce, the big shot, the leader. But there's one little problem. They invade Greece, and the Greeks start counterattacking and beating the Italians. Not only did they kick them out of Greece, very embarrassingly, they start invading Albania. Now, so here's the British and the Italians fighting down in Africa, and by the end of 1941, Italy's going to be just getting rammed, just ransacked in Africa. Now, here's Germany's ally, who, remember, has no way to help Germany. They cannot help Germany. What they're going to do? They can't help Germany. So the Germans are very frustrated. They say, why are these people doing this? Now, you got to remember, the Axis was so uncoordinated. You know how the Allies, the Americans, the British, the Russians, the Soviets, they would have these conferences and say, let's make a plan to win the war. Now you say, well, what was the Axis plan to win the war? What was Germany's plan to win the war? They actually had no plan. Their whole plan was, well, let's just see what happens. Now, imagine going to the biggest war in your country's history, but yet you just don't have a plan. You just figure, well, let's see how it works out. Great planning, right? The British had a plan. We're going to get the United States to come in and fight, because they're dumb like that. They fight other people's wars. That worked perfectly in 1917, and it worked. It's going to work very well in 1940. So they said, we'll just get the Americans to come in and help us. And the Germans say, we got to keep the Americans out. Well, that's not going to work. They're going to come in and help, because that's Roosevelt. That's the Northeastern establishment, New York, the New England states. That's who runs the show, and that is who makes the decisions. Okay, and they are very pro-British, and they're going to help Great Britain. Doesn't matter what you think about it, whether you think it's right or wrong, they're going to do it. Okay, so by 1940, the United States is an active, not official, of course, but an active ally of the British. They're helping the British. They violate neutrality, in other words. They're a neutral country, but they're not really neutral because they're helping the British. And they're bothering Japan by helping China, so they're not a neutral country. They are a neutral country in name only. They're an active ally of Great Britain. What's new? Nothing. Okay. So here's Italy. Now, the bumbling Italy. Oh, we need help. Now, meanwhile, here's Germany over here saying, you need help. Well, we're in this huge war with Great Britain because they didn't want to give up. So and you know what happened, the Battle of Britain. And then it led to bombing each other's cities. So here's Germany bombing England, the British cities. Here's the British bombing German cities. They're in this big stalemate. The British are not strong enough to make Germany give up, and the Germans are not strong enough to make the British give up. But meanwhile, they're killing thousands of people every month and accomplishing nothing, except getting a lot of people killed. Well, of course, the attitude of the Soviet Union became very problematic, because the Soviets were smiley-faced communists in 1939 and early 1940, say, oh, you're a socialist just like we are. You National Socialist and we're Soviet Socialist, and we have common ideas. We both hate capitalism and the international banking financial community and all of this stuff, and the imperialist countries. And that was all, just a bunch of garbage. They really just wanted to take over people's land and share it. Okay. But of course, Germany noticed that the Soviet Union's demeanor began to change very negatively throughout 1940. So they got extremely paranoid, the Germans said, well, if we're partners, right? Partners in crime, whatever. Why you got like thousands of airplanes and tanks and millions of soldiers along our border? Like, the Germans kept telling the Soviets, like, what's going on? I thought we were supposed to, like, why is there this huge array? And then you attack Finland, and then you take over Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and now you're like massing troops along, no, literally along the German border. You got troops massed along the German border. And I mean millions of soldiers and planes and tanks. And now you're attacking Romania, well, forcing them to give up Bukovina and Bessarabia. Romania, you know, a German ally, by the way, where Germany gets all their oil, by the way. So the Germans are telling the Soviet Union, like, what is going on? We don't understand all this. I mean, what's with the attitude? I mean, we're supposed to be working together, and then you're putting all these millions of troops on the border. It's like, we about to invade us? And, you know, the Soviet attitude was, you know, don't worry about that. And they said, well, what do you mean don't worry about that? If somebody took a gun and pointed it at my head and started cocking the, you know, cocking the gun, you would say, well, why are you pointing a gun at my head? Oh, no, don't worry about that. I just do that, point guns at people. So you got to understand what's happening in 1940, 41, right? So here's the point of the video. Now let's say, so we know what happened. Italy gets beat by Greece, and so the Germans got to go and rescue Greece. But there's only one problem with that. Yugoslavia is in the way. You know, Yugoslavia, big old country, used to stretch from Italy down to Greece. Some of you older people like me, you remember Yugoslavia, that country. It used to be a big old country, you know. So the Germans tell Yugoslavia, well, we got this big old problem. We're dealing with these clowns down here in Greece, and oh, Lord, we got to go help them, okay? Because they're, you know, basically incompetent. So if you would allow us to let troops come through your country, then we could go and fight the Greeks, and we're not going to molest you, okay? So the Yugoslavian government at first says, well, okay, we're not looking to get attacked. We'll let you bring your troops through our country, and you can fight Greece. Germans say, good, good, you know, because we don't need more trouble. But there was one problem. The Yugoslavians, especially the Serbians who are pro-Russian, they said, we don't want these Germans coming through our country. So they had an uprising in Yugoslavia. The government was overthrown and replaced by a pro-Soviet government, not a pro-German government. Oh, the Germans get so angry. They say, look, now, if you don't let us pass through your country, we're going to attack your country. And the most bizarre thing was right after this overthrow, the Soviet Union's TASS, whatever, newspaper and radio apparatus says, oh, we congratulate the Yugoslavians on their new government and their change of course, or whatever they said. And that's when the Germans got extremely paranoid, because Hitler tells the Soviets, why are you congratulating our enemy? We don't understand, like, I mean, you could have talked about, it's like that movie Casino. Why we didn't talk about this in private? Remember when Nicky tells Mr. Rothstein, you know, Ace. He tells Ace, why you didn't talk to him about this with me in private? You going over my head and talking to the bosses. That doesn't look good. So that's what Hitler tells the Soviets. Why are you congratulating our enemies in public? I mean, this looks bad. You know, it's like you're our enemy. You know, you're our enemy. And then we have the whole issue with you massing troops along the border. So they said, we need to talk. I mean, we need to talk like real quick, because it's turning into this crisis. And they kept warning the Soviets all through 1940. This is not going to stay like this, where we got to keep 90% of our troops on the eastern border to protect us from our partner. Like, we don't understand what's supposed to be happening. And, you know, they had the famous meeting in Berlin in late 1940 with Molotov, the Soviet foreign minister, and they say, why is this going on? And he was just very rude to Hitler. He said, oh, well, you know, they just kept saying, well, forget about it. And they said, the prices you charge for all those war materials are extraordinary, like exorbitant prices. You're obviously, you know, charging us extremely high amounts because you know you can get away with it. We resent it. But they just kept saying, oh, well, something like that. There was like a term they used, like, forget about it. Don't worry about it. And the Germans kept telling them, what do you mean don't worry about it? How can we not worry about this? It's like insane. What are you talking about? And they just kept telling them, don't you understand what's going to happen? That this is not going to happen. Like, this is not going to, they're just basically telling them, if you don't get the troops off if you don't back off, this is not going to turn out well. I mean, you can kind of interpret that how you want, but we guarantee you that there is no way this is going to work out well. This went on for like a year, and the Soviets just kept saying, forget about it. They said, look, this is the biggest crisis you can imagine. And they just would not listen to them. So, and then when this thing happened with Yugoslavia, they just threw a fit. They just said, that's it. It is on. Because it's obvious what's going to happen, you know. So, but then you said, what about Italy? Italy, the whole video is about Italy. I understand that. Let's look at Italy. Let's just assume Italy had, well, of course, then what happens? Talk about Greece. So that leads to that worst flare-up in the east. Then the British start attacking Italy in Africa and whipping them, of course. Now, what does Germany have to do? No, they can't go deal with the crisis with the Soviet Union in the east and then deal with the crisis with Great Britain in the west. Oh, no. Now, they got to go down and send troops into Libya, Africa, to help Italy survive the British onslaught. Now, what is the benefit to Great Britain to send troops down into Africa to help Italy survive the British onslaught? I'll be right back. So the answer is there is no benefit to Germany. They gotta, this is a distract. They gotta send all these troops down into Africa to help the incompetent ally who cannot help them. And then what happens in Libya? 1941-42. You know what happens? A stalemate. The British are not strong enough to beat the Germans and the Italians. But the Italians and the Germans are not strong enough to beat the British, who are coming at them from Egypt, who the British occupied Egypt. And the Egyptians were neutral in World War II. Their whole attitude was, well, you could leave, you know, we don't really want to be involved in World War II. The British say, oh, it's okay. We have no plans to leave. And they didn't leave until the 1950s. When they almost had another world war. Well, kind of. All right. Well, that's another incident, 1956. But these guys, okay. But anyway, so now here's Germany. They got to fight the British in the Northwest. They got this looming problem with Russia in the East, their partner, their so-called partner. And now they got to waste all this time and money and lives fighting to help Italy survive the onslaught against Great Britain. Well, this was a terrible distraction, and it didn't accomplish anything. And they lost that battle down in Africa, in fact, eventually. So let's just imagine that Italy had not joined the war. Let's say that Mussolini had good sense. I mean, we know he did not. In some ways, he was competent. But in other ways, he was totally incompetent. Like, it's kind of like Hitler, that he couldn't ever see a big picture. He could only look at details, but he couldn't ever see the whole story, you know? But only parts of the story. Like, let's just say, for the sake of argument, and the whole video is the sake of argument, let's just say that Italy hadn't joined the war, that somehow Mussolini had some little moment where he had clarity and he's like Franco and said, I don't want to get involved in this. even though he was getting advice from people saying, we don't think you should get involved. Let's just say he listened to that and said, yeah, let's not jump the gun. Maybe it's not over. Okay, let's assume they didn't join in 1940 and they just waited to see what's going to happen. That's the whole key to the video. So then what happens? Italy doesn't get attacked in Africa. None of their colonies get attacked. And they don't have to waste time and money and lives attacking the British colonies. I mean, because, like, why do you need that? You don't need it. You just want it because you're greedy. So now here's Italy with a big old navy. You know, they had one of the best navies in the world. Italy was one of the wealthiest and most powerful countries in the world. There's only one problem. They were in last place in that list. You understand what I'm saying? So if you're in last place in the top 7, that means the other 6 can really beat you bad. That's the only problem. So, I mean, if you're fighting Ethiopia or Uruguay, hey, you might turn out okay. But if you're fighting Great Britain, you're going to get killed. All right, so, but let's say they didn't join. They keep their navy intact. None of their cities get bombed. They can just watch, wait, and see what happens. Meanwhile, they could have just kept selling weapons to Germany and making all kind of money because the British cannot blockade that. And of course, the British weren't going to attack Italy. They didn't want them in a war. They would just have to tolerate it. So they could have just sat back and just watched it happen. Now, of course, as it turns out, if Italy would have seen that Germany would have lost the Battle of Britain, which we know by the end of 1940, Germany lost the Battle of Britain. They're obviously not going to win the war quickly like it was first assumed. It's going to be a long stalemate. And then there's this big old problem with the Soviet Union cropping up. Italy could have seen all that. And what could they have said to themselves? We ain't getting involved. We're just going to watch it happen. Then Germany does not have to send all the troops down into the Balkans to help Italy fight Greece. Germany doesn't have to send all the troops wasting time, lives, and money to help them fight in Africa. There's no southern front, no Italian front, no weak underbelly. Everybody's neutral in the south. It's not like Great Britain's going to invade France itself. They might attack French colonies, which they did in 1940, 41, and 42. You wouldn't have had the incident in Yugoslavia, which might have not, perhaps, though unlikely, the flare-up with the Soviet Union would not have occurred, or could have been diffused some kind of way. But more than likely, it would not have been diffused because there was just this intractable stubbornness on the part of Stalin to not work out the deal. He was very foolish because if he would have been more cooperative with Germany, he might have gotten everything he wanted without a war. You see what I mean? Like, they already had Eastern Poland. They had Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. They had Eastern Finland. They had Bessarabia and Bukovina with no fighting, except for the little fighting in Poland. If they would have just backed off like they were asked to do, there would have been no war with Germany, and they would have gotten everything they had in 1945 without a war, essentially. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, yeah, but Hitler talked about he would love to have Eastern Europe as a plantation for Germany. But that's all just talk. It wasn't like they could afford to do this in 1941. I mean, they did it. Germany did launch Operation Barbarossa in June 22nd, 1941. But that was because of fear and feeling like they were going to get jumped. So they better do the jumping before they get jumped. But if Italy hadn't gotten involved, there would have been an entire buffer area in the south. And I'm not saying Germany would have won the war. I don't think Germany had much. Germany didn't have a great chance of winning from day one in this war. I said that in the other video. Hitler's biggest mistake in World War II was getting involved in World War II. Okay, getting involved in World War II. I'm not here to take up for Hitler. If you do stupid things and you do bad things happen, and I'm not here to defend you. Okay, but it could have made a big difference as far as allocation of soldiers and everything. Germany might have had a better chance against the Soviet Union. They came close to beating them anyway, or reasonably close to beating them. You say, well, Italy sent troops to help Germany fight the Soviet Union. Yeah, I know. So did Spain. But did it help? Not really. So it just wouldn't have led to that chain reaction of events. Fighting down in Africa, the Allies coming from the south. Now remember, they came from the south. Where did the Allies first land in Europe? Not Normandy, France. That was June 1944. No, it was a year before in Italy. They come through Sicily. You know, they come in there from Egypt, and the Americans, remember the Americans and the British invaded France, French Africa. France is trying to stay out the war. But like I said, if you're a neutral and you're in the way, you get an attack. Sorry. They're coming in through Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. And they squeeze the axis out of Africa up through Sicily and into Italy. Now Germany's got to fight a huge war in Italy all the way through 1943, 44, and 45. Doesn't do them much good, does it? Sure didn't do Italy any good with their whole country bombed up and destroyed. So you have to think, what might have happened if Italy had stayed out? That would have been one less front, one less war front in the war. You never know what could have happened if you'd only had the Eastern Front and the Western Front, but not the Southern Front. Makes one wonder, doesn't it? It certainly does. So anyway, I appreciate you watching this video production. And if you have something to say about it, please speak and we'll talk about it. And people can actually come on these discussions and talk about it. It doesn't have to be a solo act. You're welcome to join. So let me know and you can join. Now it's time to go watch baseball.